She looked at me dumbfounded. I gave her a minute to gather herself, but she was just looking at me. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Aura Zone Stories. Today we have a story where this woman never thought she would see all the evidence of pictures and messages of her affair. Let's see how this story ended. My wife, call her M, cheated on me with a friend of mine, call him J for the story's sake. A bit of backstory. We met when I was 22 at another friend's wedding. She was a good friend of the bride and I the groom, and they sat us at that table so we would get together. When I first seen her, I was completely taken back by how beautiful she was, and when she sat down and we began to talk, we found out we had a lot of things in common. We clicked instantly. We talked for a while, ate the dinner, and took to the dance floor. We danced and drank through the night. We ended up caressing in the middle of the dance floor, and when we pulled away, our friends, the bride and groom, came up to us and asked what was up between us. They were really excited to play matchmaker. We just shrugged it off and carried on with our night. We left not exchanging numbers, but about a week later I got a text from her asking me out. Bride gave her my number. I of course said yes, and it turned into a relationship. The relationship was great. Other than small arguments, we never really fought, and it was never anything really serious. I eventually asked her to marry me about 2 years into us dating, and we were married less than a year later. We were married for a little more than a year when it all came crashing down on me. Just before our first anniversary, there were little things that were irritating me. She became more guarded of her phone. Girls' nights became more frequent, and our life was almost non-existent. I had brought this up on multiple occasions, but was brushed off, and that I'm letting my insecurities get to me. She would continue go on as if what I felt and tried to communicate didn't matter to her. So I became colder and colder. I stopped giving her a goodbye hug as I leave for work, and unless it was something important, we hardly spoke. One night while she slept, I took her phone and laptop and skimmed through her texts, emails, and messenger apps and found nothing. And from reading stories on here, I checked her car. I grabbed her keys and looked in her car and found a second phone. I knew in that instant what was going on, but I wanted all the evidence for when I call her out. I didn't want her to say something like it had only happened once or anything stupid like that. I looked through the phone and found only one number. I read through every message. I connected the phone to my computer and printed out every message and every photo and spent the night researching divorce lawyers. I spent hours of my day in my at-home office reading bios of lawyers and found one that I liked and emailed him. But as it was a Saturday, he wasn't in the office. I then wanted to know who the guy was, so I grabbed my phone, typed the number I wanted to call, and pretend I'm Spectrum, because who doesn't have Spectrum? But Jay's contact popped up. It took me a minute to put 2 and 2 together, but when I did, I blew up. I was yelling and cursing in my office, and my wife opened the door to check on me. But when I see her, I told her to get out. She closed the door and went to our room. I had never cursed at my wife or raised my voice above a normal volume. All of day I never left my office. I was just silently raging, just glaring at the wall. I called one of my friends, groom from the wedding, and tell him I need to go for a drink, and asks if he'll come with me. He must have heard something in my voice, because he asked if I was okay. I told him I wasn't and I really need to drink. So, without word, I took all the printouts and left to go to the bar. I arrived, first ordered 4 shots of Jack and a beer. I was on my last shot when my friend, call him T, arrived and asked what's going on. I told him straight out M's cheating. He gave me sympathy, and I asked if he wanted to know with who, and I told him it was Jay. He became visibly irritated. He was the one that introduced me to Jay, and all he could say was I'm sorry over and over. Jay and I were never super close. We wouldn't ask one another to hang out, but if we see each other at a get-together, we were friendly. I told T don't mention this to anyone, as I had just found out and I haven't even spoken to M or a lawyer yet. I asked him not to tell his wife, and if she asked what was wrong with me, to say I'm having problems at work. He agreed. We drank and talked for most of the night, then I called an Uber and went home around 3 a.m. It was the first time I looked at my phone since I called T, and there was missed calls, a bunch of texts, all from M asking me where I was, when I'd be home, and if I was okay. I got home and she was asleep on the couch. I just walked up to our bedroom and went to sleep. I woke up with her in the bed, so I got dressed and left the house. I went to go pick up my car and go to my office and buried myself in work for the day, and went back home around 10 p.m. To my surprise, my wife was there to greet me, and she told me she had made me dinner. She asked if I wanted her to heat it up. I told her no and went to bed. She followed soon after asking what's been wrong with me. I told her to leave me alone and that I wanted to sleep. She kept pestering me. Eventually I snapped and yelled, "Stop, I am trying to sleep, go away." The next morning, I received an email from the lawyer asking to meet later in the day, and I confirmed and got ready for my day. I went downstairs to leave, and Em had made breakfast asking to talk. I made a small plate and sat down. She started by saying I've been acting different and going on and on about how I changed. And she wants to know why. I told her work has been stressful, and soon it would be all over. I finished up and told her I've got to go. I went to my office and counted down the minutes to go meet the lawyer. When I left, I told my assistant I'm going out to lunch with a client. My wife would call my work sometimes, and left. The meeting with the lawyer went well, and I handed over all I had gathered on her. And the lawyer had told me, "Well, I'm sorry for all that's going on, but I'm happy you gathered all this information. You see, we live in an at-fault state, so your wife has no claim on most of your money." I told him I didn't even think about that. I was just thinking I've got to divorce her as soon as possible. He asked to keep the evidence, but I told him I'd prefer you to just make copies, as I haven't told my wife. I don't want to hear her excuses. He agreed and had his assistant make copies. I asked when she will be served with papers. He told me about 2 weeks. I then thanked him and left. I went home to confront my wife when I arrived. She wasn't home, so I called her, no answer. Called again, no answer. I texted her, "I don't care if you're riding with Jay right now, get home, we need to talk." Lo and behold, she calls me not a minute later asking what I was talking about. All I told her was get home now. She arrives about 15 minutes later, and I said to her, "Wow, look at that, 15 minutes, that's about the same distance between here and Jay's, isn't it?" She looked at me dumbfounded. I gave her a minute to gather herself, but she was just looking at me, and I said, "Well, nothing to say." She tried to deny and gaslight me, and I let her continue on. She worked herself up and started to insult me. I slammed my fist on the table to shut her up and pulled out the evidence at first and showed it from the side and said, "Look at this mountain of things I gathered on you." Then I showed her each printout at a time. She then tells me to stop and started to cry. She tried to apologize and tells me she loved me. I said, "Honey, what happened to that energy you had before? You were so adamant on degrading and insulting me just a minute ago." She tried to hug me and tell me how sorry she is. I put my hand out and told her don't touch me. She says, "Well, go to the bedroom and do whatever I like." I looked her deep in her eyes and told her, "Sweetheart, I will never touch you again. Do you want to know who else has these photos and messages? My lawyer. I'm divorcing you now. Get a bag, gather your clothes, and get out of my house." That was 3 days ago, and I haven't heard from her. I'm curious to those have been where I'm at. What can I expect from here? After I posted the first part of this, you all have given me a ton of advice, so I followed most of it. This morning I planned on doing a bit of damage control of my life, so I scheduled an appointment with my doctor to get checked for STDs, and I have that appointment in 2 days. Next, I started contacting all the people close to me, my father and a few friends. They all have been really supportive, offering their own advice and asking if I need help with anything. But as I got this on lock, I declined. I then started to contact her family. I sent a text to her mom and dad thanking them for allowing me into their family, and that I was grateful for all that they had done for me. But Em and I are getting divorced, and that I would miss them terribly. Not really, they were very suffocating, and while they are great people, I'm happy I no longer have to deal with it. I then told them if they had any questions, feel free to ask. I didn't hear back from them for a while, so I moved on to Em's sister. This kind of hurt because her sister and I were good friends, and I knew this would mess up that friendship. I texted her, "Hey, I'm sorry to have to text you this, but Em and I are going to get a divorce, and I wanted you to know. I want to thank you from day one. You accepted me as a brother. I will be around if you ever need anything from me." Around the time I sent the text, her parents responded back. I'll type up how the conversation went. "Parents, we are so sorry to hear this. What happened? Why hasn't Em said anything to us? Me. Em has been in at least a year-long affair, I suspect. It started before our wedding. I'm unsure why she hasn't reached out, but I think you should call her. She left the house. I figured she would have gone to you." Parents, no, we haven't heard from her. We'll call her. Thanks for letting us know. Are you sure she was having an affair? Me, I am positive. I found their texts. Parents, we're so sorry that she did that. We will try and get in touch with her. After dealing with her family, I moved on to Jay's fiancé. I thought this was going to be difficult, that M and J would have conspired some master plan. But either M didn't tell him I found out, or they're just idiots. I sent her a text around 2 p.m. and asked if we could meet for a coffee or something by 2:05 p.m. She agreed and told me to meet her at some gross hipster coffee shop across from her work at 2:30 p.m. I arrived, first ordered my horrible coffee and waited for a few minutes. She walked in, ordered hers and came and joined me. I told her, there's no easy way to say what I'm about to tell you, so I'm just going to blurt it out. Jay has been cheating on you with my wife. It's been going on for more than a year. She was obviously shocked, so I then told her, I only found out a few days ago. I know I should have told you then, but I had a divorce to get started and my own pity to deal with. She asked how I found out. I told her everything that's in the first post. I then asked if she wanted to see the evidence I gathered and pulled out a binder. She grabbed the binder and skimmed through the messages and pictures and just started to silently cry. I told her she's more than welcome to take the binder, extra copies if she wanted to confront Jay with it, or use it to see if he would lie. She thanked me, stood up, took the binder, and I told her if she needs anything from me to let me know. She nodded her head and walked out looking very defeated. I know you all told me to just stay sober, keep a level head and whatnot, but my world just came crashing down on my head. I'm going to take this week to sit on my back porch, drink, and blare music. After this week, I'll stop feeling sorry for myself, get back to my usual schedule. On a more positive note, I've already packed up most of her things, clothes, jewelry, etc. I also threw in our wedding book and every photo that has her in it in the boxes. If and when she comes back for her stuff, I don't want her here any longer than she needs to be. Also, before you ask, no, I didn't ruin her clothes other than a few picture frames. Nothing's broken. As of right now, there's nothing else happening. I told everyone I needed to tell. My doctor's appointment is scheduled. My lawyer's hard at work to get me out of this nonsense, and 90% of her things are in boxes. I really don't know what's left. If she stays out of my hair, this might be the smoothest divorce ever. I'm sorry, he is going through this situation. It's the one club nobody wants to be a part of. He has done very well getting out ahead of this situation. He preemptively set the narrative. His ex-wife seems to have stuck her head in the sand and hoped this whole situation would blow over. The fact that his wife went completely radio silent proves that she didn't care, love, or respect him. She moved on before he even got married. Nor sure why she even got married if she was having the affair prior to the ceremony. Sounds like she got off on deceiving him. That was the honeymoon phase of his marriage. It would have only gotten worse with time. While I was volunteering at a church, I met somebody that I would become absolutely smitten with. Head over heels for them. They weren't interested, but that didn't do anything to keep me from feeling that way. It wasn't until 3 years later that we started dating, and to be honest, it was a great time. We were very open and honest with one another. We went on dates every weekend, and though we weren't very intimate, I followed her pace. Things were great, and months flew by. But one day, something drastically changed. We were sitting in the trees, talking about the future, when she sat up and seemed a bit embarrassed. I asked her what was the problem, and she hesitantly proposed we open the relationship. I was confused, as I knew I wasn't lacking as a partner, but as she explained and told me who she was thinking about, it was another woman. I reluctantly agreed as long as she kept me in the loop. I was head over heels for her, and I'd do anything to make her happy. 2 weeks later, she ended the relationship. She never really gave me a reason. To be honest, it was the first time I poured my heart out for somebody. It really hurt. I was probably a recluse for a month before I started to live my life again. As I said, she never gave me a reason, but she still wanted to stay friends. Wanting closure, I started to poke and prod her to find out the reason. Eventually, she told me, I just couldn't see a future with you. After that, I ended our friendship and did my best to move on. It was a few months later that she approached me while I was at church and asked to talk to me. Of course, I did. She explained that during our relationship, she didn't just talk to that one woman, but 3 other guys as well. The guilt over it was the reason why she broke up with me. She apologized so sincerely and even started crying, begging for my forgiveness and to be with her again. That she was the one at fault and she wanted to have us again. She hugged me like she used to, and if I'm honest, I was a hair's breadth away from saying yes. But I told her I would think about it, and decided to ghost her. I probably should have told her straight to her face, but I didn't trust myself, as I still had some pretty strong feelings for her. Just her smell alone was enough to make me swoon. I stopped answering her texts and her calls. When she joined a conversation I was in, I'd leave. We had many mutual friends, and they noticed something was wrong, so they approached me. And not too proud of it, but I told them. This led to her quickly being ostracized at the church, and ended up with her not coming at all. It did cause some really bad insecurity problems that follow me to this day. It's probably a major reason why I would later go on to join the military, to try and feel like a macho man, and not the unwanted boy she made me feel like. Some years later, when I was at home on vacation, she found out and contacted me. I didn't love her anymore, and if anything, I was very bitter. The negative feelings I have for her had been stewing for a while, and I had been replaying things over and over in my head. I decided to take revenge on her. For about a week, I toyed with her. It was cruel, and I hate that I did it, but looking back it did seem to help some of my issues that related to her. After I left, she tried to keep contact. I didn't. It seems she got the picture, because I've been back home several times since, and she hasn't tried to contact me once. To this day, years later, getting cheated on is one of my biggest fears. It's enough to the point where I'll not sleep for several days, throw up uncontrollably, and not eat. Even the thought of it is enough to make me start shaking. It's probably why I haven't pursued relationship at all this past year. I don't know why I'm writing this. To be honest, this is everything I hate, and feeds into my insecurities when I even glance at it. But I guess I wanted somebody to hear my story. Like a confession, I guess. He must stop living in fear and don't allow himself to be a victim to this woman's actions, as he has stated it's causing him all this unnecessary heartache, and is preventing him from living his best life.